And welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Gatecrash here from Montreal. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Brian David Marshall, and we have draft action for you here from round 9. Melissa Detora, you can get a look at her on the left-hand side versus Timothy Simonet. We have a guild fight here, BDM.
Yeah, this is Simic versus Orzhov, and both players lead off with the guild gate of their chosen group. Although, interestingly, we see a mountain from Timothy Simonet.
Yeah, so he's splashing red in this deck for a couple of very powerful cards that we know of.
Go.
All right, there's the Basilica Screecher.
So that's actually a very fine turn 2 play for the Orzhov deck. It can really start gaining momentum quickly, and we see Timothy, he's got all of his colors. And he's also got a life pad, which he is now updating as the Basilica Screecher comes in for 1 damage.
Let's take a look at what's going on in Timothy Simonet's hand. Let's see what his deck looks like.
Your turn.
And there we see what the red's for.
There's one of them. He's got another card I know of as well. We'll see if it pops up. He's got a Gore Clan Rampager as a fine red splash. Also, a Scab Clan Charger. Urban Evolution is the card that I was mentioning earlier for you.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, he's just drawn a Drakewind Crisis. You guys can see on the right side, we've got a new graphic that will show you what's in the player's hand. The card that's highlighted is the card that they've last drawn as well. All right, so Timotei looks like he led off with the Gore Clan Charger.
Scab Clan Charger.
Scab Clan Charger, thank you. These clans, you know.
Yeah.
17. And
a Syndic of Tides has followed up for Melissa Detora. She has bashed in there with her Basilica Screecher after extorting, and now she's on her 4th turn, and she's deciding what she wants to do. She's going to tap out, and she's going to play a Daring Skyjack, and she's going to extort twice, and that thing's going to have flying next turn if she's uninterrupted here.
And let's take a look at what's going on in the rest of Melissa's hand here now. Let's see what she's got.
All right, so she's got 2 cards that don't do a whole heck of a lot
But both of those are cards that she's going to be able to have the excess mana to extort twice.
That's right. They're both cheap spells, and that goes a long way.
And now we see Disciple of the Old Ways and a Drakewind Crisis.
All right, so 2 creatures.
By the way, the incidental red splash with the Disciple of the Old Ways.
Yeah, it can be
a card
very
I'm fine playing in Simic anyway, right? I just want that 2-drop to, get in there and tussle with Boros and whatnot.
Evolve your experiment ones, evolve your Cloudfin Raptors. It's fine. But having that random red source is definitely nice. Right now, Melissa is going to tap out on her turn because she drew Basilica Guards, and she is going to get 2 extort triggers off of that as well. So she's, even though she doesn't have great attacks here,
Your turn.
in fact, she has no attack. She doesn't even offer the trade with the Screecher for the Drakewind Crisis. She just says, I'm just going to keep casting spells. She knows she has 2 more that are going to get the full extort value here.
Right, she can get Timothy to 7 without going anywhere near the red zone.
It's incredible. And that's what Orzhov does best. I think that the best Orzhov decks have lots of extort. When I first saw it, I was considering, well, maybe it'll be a thing you have 1 or 2 of and you kind of grind value. Man, extorting for 4 is amazing, it turns out. It's like getting free spells.
Yeah. And here we go. Is this? Nope, it's the Gore Clan Rampager.
Yep, Gore Clan Rampager comes down for Timotei, and that's going to at least threaten some offense here at some point for him, as Melissa is sitting very comfortably at 25 life.
She can now get, she can get him to 4 with her hand.
Extort 3 times.
Oh yeah, she does. She drew 1 this turn.
Oh, okay.
Your turn.
So, there's, not a lot of going on in Simonet's hand, but that could change very quickly.
I think he's got 2 Urban Evolutions in hand. He does indeed. So he could have a whole heck of a lot going on in his hand, but unfortunately for him, he's under actually a significant amount of pressure here, and he might not have time to utilize all the things he's going to draw with those Urban Evolutions.
So cool.
Doesn't have any other play this turn, so he's going to be doing it regardless. But
right, because we look at Melissa's hand again, and we see a Lightning Helix and another Lightning Helix.
Yeah. a 1/1 regenerating Lightning Helix, and a white of Precinct 6, which is actually just a 1/1 here.
Well, this is just going to be like, sure, I'm at 24.
Yeah,
24.
You did it. Okay, so he's going to play Urban Evolution. He's going to leave up his Simic Guildgate. So he's going to draw 3. He's going to have an extra land drop. He might actually be able to play another card this turn, another, spell this turn as well. Plays a Forest, and he hadn't played a land yet, so he's able to play 2 lands this turn, and he just ships the turn back. He's got tons of mana available, 2 cards in hand, but not a lot going on versus Orzhov and their extort shenanigans. I mean, that's one of the things that you must be aware of.
Before people panic about playing 2 lands in a turn, let's show them Urban Evolution.
Yeah, good idea. He very casually put both of them down.
Yeah, and there we see that one of the cards he drew, the other card he drew. So he drew 2 lands and a Crown Ceratok.
Crown Ceratok's a sweet card, but really, one of the things about Simic that is something that you have to deal with is the fact that it doesn't get true removal, especially against Orzhov. I'm sure you're familiar with this.
I am well familiar with this.
When somebody plays a Basilicus creature against you and you're in Simic, it's painful.
I was pretty salty about the Orzhov guild in general, like the first week of this draft format, because I was playing Simic all the time.
All right.
Nice smite jerk.
Yeah. All right, a Towering Thunderfist for Seamano here. So it looks like he's maybe had to stretch a little for playables.
Some non-spicy splash red cards.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that card, but he can't. I don't think he has access to even white mana to activate it, so it's just acting as a 4/4 for 5, which is fine.
24.
All right, so Melissa's going to block with Dutiful Thrill to soak up 1 of the damage.
And she's at the same life total she was at the end of last turn. So Urban Evolution number 2.
Right. Let's see if Timotei can find some action here. One of the cards that he'd love to see is one of his splash cards, but he doesn't see it. He's got Wildwood Rebirth, not a card I'm a big fan of.
Oh yeah, I like that card.
You like it? Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you got something like the Gore Clan Rampager that you're splashing, you can. It's an instant, right?
Yes,
so you could be like,
oh, I can see where you're going.
You can be like, Bloodthirst my guy.
Blood Rush it.
Yeah, Blood Rush my guy, get it back, Blood Rush another guy. Like,
and that only costs 6 mana. It's actually a feasible play. And that's 8 extra trample damage, too. So
or Slaughterhorns, right, is 4 mana to do it twice.
Yep. That is interesting. I did not consider that. All right, so Melissa is tapping mana here, so it looks like she's going to play Cartel Aristocrat. Now, you mentioned this earlier, where the Cartel Aristocrat can be a finisher in a lot of decks because it can simply bash through. Everything he has is green. She can sack some random creature that she doesn't need. Oh, it looks like she's going to enter the red zone here, though. Daring Skyjack is going to trigger with Battalion. It's going to become a 3/1 with flying. And Timotei is going to have to do some blocking here. He's going to put the Krasis in front of the Daring Skyjack. And that means that Melissa is going to get in for 1 damage. And with a Basilicus creature, and it's basically a free attack.
Well, and he's dead next turn. We know she's got a White Precinct 6 in her hand. As long as he can't kill her 3 extort creatures.
Right. But even then, he has to deal with the Cartel Aristocrat, so Melissa's in a commanding position here. Yes. Let's see what he can draw. Agoraphobia, not going to get it done either. He still has a Towering Thunderfist in hand. Did he draw Aetherize? He did draw Aetherize, but again, it's just not that good versus Extort. Yeah,
well, and you're not a fan of that card at all.
Aetherize, I'm okay with.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. But this is a situation where it's mediocre. If she moves in, she can play White of Precinct 6. She can extort him 3 times and just kill him.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, if that weren't to happen, she still has the Cartel Aristocrat play, which the Aetherize will help with, but not fix.
In fact, what's almost worse.
Yeah, because she gets to replay it. Actually, yeah, that would actually not only help, it would actually just make it worse. You're right.
It's like bounce your flyer. Okay.
So does he have enough power on the board to even threaten a 2-turn clock here? Because he has to play as if Melissa had nothing in hand.
No, he's showing 12 damage if she doesn't block.
And she's at 27 again, thanks to the power of Extort.
As we can see from his hand.
He's looking to make an attack here, but remember, if he does that, Melissa also just has creatures. They also attack and deal damage if there's nothing to block them, just like normal. So she just has this game in a stranglehold from multiple directions.
Right. He's just trying to represent, you know, some crazy bloodthirst scenario here. Where
He is, you know, another play he could be making here is just he's attacking all in, and he says, okay, maybe Melissa gets sloppy. Right? Like, if his out is that she gets sloppy and just says, well, I guess you're just dead, I attack with everything, and he goes Aetherize, she might not have enough mana to recast
I keep saying
play.
Bloodthirst, but it's Blood Rush.
It's Blood Rush, yeah. But if she, you know, and again, he wouldn't plan on her actually doing that, but when that's the only way you can win the game, that's what you do. All right. So Melissa's going to make a couple of blocks here.
Block those guys.
Looks in his graveyard. What we like to call the Wildwood Rebirth Tell.
So she's just going to throw the white under the bus here. She'll probably
all right, I'll
just sacrifice it and give it pro green, which is what she's going to do.
So 8.
So she takes 8 damage from the 2 4-powered tramplers. Drops her down to finally below her starting life total. She's at 19 now. And Timotei is going to have to play out that Thunder Fist, but he's going to leave up mana for Aetherize. Again, situations in which he wins this game are very slim, but he is at least attempting to play to that situation right now. Melissa's just going to calmly play White of Precinct 6, and that's a spell. That counts as a spell.
Yeah.
And
then after he scoops, he realizes that he wants to see. He's like, well, what were you going to cast?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That little bit of information that you'll get afterwards, yeah. So Melissa Detora takes down game 1. We'd like to thank Card House Games for being an official card retailer here at Pro Tour Gatecrash. For all things Magic, Card House Games is one of the premier destinations on the internet. For more information, visit cardhouse.com. All right, so that game went quite according to plan from what Melissa had planned out when she drafted the deck. She was able to get in a few early hits, and she was able to extort a lot that game. Now, what can Timotei do to help combat this?
Like, yeah, I mean, he really needs removal, and you got to hope that that red is for some kind of removal, right?
I know it is,
yeah.
Although, and it's really good removal, but it's only one card. Sometimes it kills 2 creatures. Though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one kills 2 creatures sometimes. Sometimes it kills your opponent.
I mean, he just needs a more aggressive draw.
That's what he needs, right?
He needs to come out. He needs, you know, to play. I don't know what his. We haven't seen his deck list yet.
Yeah.
But we need his evolved creatures. You know, he needs to play like a Cloudfin Raptor.
That's right.
Get it up to a 3/4.
When you curve into a Crown Ceratok, you're a happy camper.
Yeah.
Things, you know, you can actually put pressure because it turns out Basilica's creature doesn't block very well.
No.
You know, it's an offensive card that isn't really meant to block. And we know that Melissa isn't particularly heavy on removal herself. So if Timotei can get off to a start where he curves maybe a 2, a 3, and a 4 drop together, he's going to have a really commanding board presence. And his creatures are, by and large, much better than Melissa's as they sit on the battlefield, like when it comes to combat.
Not good.
But, you know, this was, you know, we saw him with 2 Urban Evolution in hand.
Right.
When you're at parity, that's about the dreamiest scenario I could possibly think of. But when you're behind, it's painful.
But like you said, if you have a card maybe that can get you to parity also, sometimes a card like that is pretty sweet.
Absolutely. Now, he is in Simic, which just doesn't have those big equalizer cards. It's more of a momentum type deck, right? Where, like, you start off early, and you start building on what you started with. You mentioned Cloudfin Raptor, something like an Experiment 1 can become a card that can deal 6, 7 points of damage over the course of the game pretty easily.
Let's take a look at Urban Evolution. It's a card I'm wondering if people are going to play in Constructed, actually.
I've seen it a little bit. I don't know if it'll, you know, become a staple, but yeah. Urban Evolution is the card I was most excited for when I started looking at Gatecrash, you know, during the preview period. And
I have it in my commander deck, and I cast it the other night for the first time, and it was so exciting.
Yeah, and the card is beautiful to start with, but it's also very, very powerful if you have the time to cast it. And that's one of the things that is the big question mark for this format. We get to take a look at Urban Evolution here, Uncommon Sorcery, and man, that has like all the words that I want on a Magic card right there. Draw 3 cards, yes please. Play extra land so I can actually cast some of those cards, yes
several
please.
of my favorite terms in Magic.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And I kind of wish they'd stuck with the playtest name, though.
What was it? Science?
Science!
Science! With an exclamation point. I love it.
You're probably a little too young for Thomas Dolby, but that's a...
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
You miss me.
Yeah. Kids these days.
But yeah, Urban Evolution, you know, I have to say, I did find the deck to play it in. And I think it's the ramp deck, you know, Verdant Haven, Greenside Watcher, Gates. And they actually let you play this early and give you the ability to play it and something else in a turn.
You've been drafting that deck more and more.
I have.
It's like a good stuff deck, right?
It is a good stuff deck. It gives you a lot of freedom. And
Big stuff deck.
Yes, and that's the thing is that the 6s and 7s in this format, you know, we saw a lot of them pass during the draft portions here. And they're... Like, a lot of people are shying away from the 6 and 7 mana cost creatures in this thing because they're too expensive. You don't have the time a lot of times. But this deck, the ramp deck, actually can actually cast these in a reasonable time frame.
Give me an update quickly on one of the matches on the back table between 2 Magic heavyweights, Pat Cox and Paul Rietzel.
Oh, yeah.
It is I believe, a Boros Mirror. And they're
we know Paul Rietzel's
and they're tied up
in
1 apiece.
Ooh.
Going to game 3.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cox is actually Gruul, but he does but he has a Boros Reckoner.
All right.
So second game now, Timothy Simino.
Looks like he's going to take a mull.
Yeah, I mean, and that happens a lot when you have that 3-color deck in these formats, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have all these cards that you can draw. I mean, 2 or 3 cards you can draw, but if you get 1 or 2 of them in your hand, you know, you get a Towering Thunderfist in your hand, and
I always say Thundering Tower Fist, by the way, every time.
I guess there's a lot worse permutations you can come up with for that.
Absolutely true.
And you see a card like that in your opening hand, you just like have to ship it back. Right?
Yes,
like,
absolutely. And I mean, you know, it's clear that Timothy's deck has some powerful cards in it, but when you're running 2 Urban Evolution and a Towering Thunderfist in your Simic deck, that's not where you want to be. I love Urban Evolution, but if you run 1, that's plenty. You might not even run that 1 ideally. Like, you'd rather just have some big creature like an Adaptive Snapjaw or something. So he's definitely doing a little brewing here on the fly.
Yeah.
He's going to lead off with the Forest, Melissa with the Swamp. No turn 1 plays from either player. Now let's see. Yeah, Timothy, we want him to get off to a quick start, but he doesn't have a 2-drop here. Let's see if Melissa does.
Go.
No, she's got a Basilica Guards we can see, but no actual 2-drop to start attacking with. And Timothy, he finds a 2-drop on turn 3.
If you're playing along at home, guess what he drew this turn?
Yeah, Disciple of the Old Ways is what he played.
And then Basilica Guard from...
What?
Basilica Guards for Melissa Detora. And Timothy misses his land drop and ships the turn back. 4 mana for Melissa. Let's see what she's got. She has no offense going, although I do see that she's got a Court Street Denizen in hand. Also a Syndic of Tides.
So let's take a look at all the cards that are bouncing around in Simino's hand, waiting for the mana to cast them. We see he's got a Gridlock, a Mystic Genesis, an Urban Evolution, like kind of like 3 do-nothing cards for the first 5 turns of the game.
These are the type of cards that you look at on the face and you get excited by, and when you play them in reality, you wish you didn't have them in your deck.
Drakewing Crassus, you just drew the island, and then a Crown Ceratok.
Okay.
I think he's got to play the Crown Ceratok here, right?
Yeah, just run it out there, absolutely. Yeah. This is going to shore up the ground game for him, and it's going to give him a potent attacker that actually has attacks right now.
We see the Court Street Denizen has joined the team for Melissa. Let's take a look at her hand.
All right, she has a pretty nice hand here. There's the Beckon Apparition that you mentioned earlier. She has a Grizzly Spectacle, and she's also drawn Executioner Swing, which is going to take care of that Ceratok whenever she feels like she wants to do that.
And so keep in mind that Beckon Apparition with the Courtship Denizen play represents. Like,
hey, you mentioned this. Did she do this just to show your point, or what? It's an instant speed tap.
Right. Yeah, it's an instant speed tapper. You know, you can like untap, play another white creature, and get like 2 activations. So
now Melissa decides to Grizzly Spectacle the Ceratok. She doesn't want to take any damage off of it, and she's going to get a mill of 4 here, which is actually relevant. Remember, she has White of Precinct 6
got that White of Precinct 6.
So
you can see it there.
Yeah, so she wants to get as many cards into its graveyard as she can.
But she just trades the Court Street Denizen.
Oh, she traded it off?
Yeah, she just ran it in there.
She wanted to do that because it's going to get outclassed in combat anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't think she feels like she has a ton of pressure. Also, that gets another creature in the graveyard of Simino so that she can make that White of Precinct 6 huge.
Well, and it also gets a creature in her graveyard so that she can Beckon Apparition herself.
Oh, sure.
And not remove creatures from Simino's graveyard.
I see.
Right? Because
I think she had the Spectacle, though, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she could do the Spectacle. That's
sure. We see that Mystic Genesis sitting in Simino's hand. It's a very awkward card. If you resolve it, it's usually fantastic.
There's a White of Precinct 6, and it's
I believe it's a 4/4.
Is it a 3/3 or a 4/4? It's a 4/4.
It's a 3/3. A 4/4, yeah.
3 and then 4. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Your turn.
We can hear the players working it out just to make sure they're both on the same page. That's always prudent. Simino picks up a Forest here for the turn. He does already have 5 mana of all of his colors.
I will Beckon Apparition your Clan Defiance with a sword.
Oh,
man.
So now we find out what that other red card is.
It was Clan Defiance. It got milled away, and Melissa is going to Beckon Apparition it. She's going to get a 1/1, and then she's going to block to trade off and make the White of Precinct 6 even bigger. So she's really found a way, even with a very actually mill-light deck, to make that white. It's now a 5/5.
Right. And then you see the Clan Defiance, which would obviously have been a great card for Simino to draw last turn.
Yep.
Take a look at Melissa's hand right now. Cartel Aristocrat, Syndicate Tides, Executioner Swing.
So he should be a 5/5 now, right? 2, 3, 4.
Melissa's double checking that it's actually a 5/5, and it is. So Simino played Urban Evolution, I believe, and is just continuing to develop his mana base here.
Attack.
Yeah.
Attack for 5. He's just going to have to take it here as he has no creatures on board. And she's going to follow up with the Syndic of Tides, and she's going to pay 1 for the Extort from the Basilica Guards. And Melissa is looking to be in a commanding position here. Again, the Mystic Genesis that Simino has in hand is just not doing enough here. He is way behind on board. And if if nothing changed on board, he would lose in a couple of turns.
Even Melissa's deck, whatever he counters, he's not going to have much more than a, 2/2 token. It's not going to. It's not going to have a long-term meaningful impact.
That's right. Now, and Melissa, if she, the thing about Mystic Genesis is that it is a rare, so you don't often play around it until you've seen it from your opponent. So I'm curious to see if she plays something pre-combat to make sure she gets her Extort. She does. It's a Cartel Aristocrat. Now she's going to get the Extort either way, but he is going to Mystic Genesis because he needs to fire that thing off on something.
Yeah, well, he's got to develop something on his board.
So you're at 8, I'm at 25.
So Extort does still trigger, and she does still pay for it, but he does get a 2/2 ooze out of the deal. It can at least jump in front of the Syndic of Tides or prevent it from attacking, or chump block the white. And it looks like he's going to fire off that Gridlock here and just take no damage for this turn. So he's buying a little bit of time, but he's flooding out a little here. He's drawn a Guild Gate, a Gruul Guild Gate. He plays it tapped, and he's got 2 islands in hand left. Melissa's just got, as you can see on the screen, an Executioner Swing and a Swamp. And she draws a Kingpin's Pet, so she is really looking to be in good position to take down her first match of draft here, day 2.
You see Simino looking at a pair of islands, and
normally pictures of islands make people happy.
Yeah.
Not the case here.
Attack.
All right, she's going to battle in with the White of Precinct 6, and he is going to throw the ooze under the bus. Melissa follows up with Kingpin
three
Pet
times.
+2. Extort
no,
triggers
twice,
is
sorry.
going to drop Timothy
Twice.
down to
You're at
6.
six.
And she has
Seven.
lethal on board. He needs to find a
Go.
big equalizer here, and I don't know if he has it in his deck. He's going to take a look at his graveyard here.
Which we know is a Wildwood Rebirth check.
Right.
And there you go. It's
And
what
there
he drew.
it is. Yep. And he says there's nothing in here and cordially extends his hand as Melissa Detora takes down the first match here on day 2 from Pro Tour Gatecrash.
Your deck is better than mine.
Your deck is better than mine.
I
he
think the
says.
matchup is very bad.
Yeah.
I don't fight well against Exort.
Yeah, we heard Timothy say, your deck's a lot better than mine. And I have to agree. I mean, like we said, those cards can be very powerful.
Look,
Urban
Russell, I hope the
Evolution
top 8.
and Mystic
Yeah,
Genesis, for example, are very powerful cards if you just read them. But as they play out, when you're under a lot of pressure, you just often can't find the time to resolve something like that. And, you know, when you're splashing for Towering Thunderfist, you can't be
Yeah,
too
yeah.
happy. You do what you got to do, right?
Yeah,
but like, you're not
absolutely.
happy about it. Qualifiers for the next Pro Tour have begun. You could be on the big stage for Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, taking place May 17th to 19th in San Diego. For more information, visit wizards.com/PTQ.
Okay, wait, what do I have to do? Where do I stand?
Right here.
All right, we're going to have Melissa have a few words with Tim Willoughby down there in the feature match area in just a second. You can hear her ask, where do I stand?
Okay.
All right, we're going to set it down, and we're going to have a quick chat with Melissa.
Okay, I'm Tim Willoughby here with Melissa Detora, now 9-0.
Yep.
A great way to start the day.
Awesome way to start the day. Yeah, I'm really excited.
So, obviously, yesterday didn't drop a match at any point. How similar is this draft deck to the one that you had yesterday?
It's pretty much exactly the same, except last time I was splashing a color, and this time I'm not. I really like Orzhov, so I have like 7 extort guys and removal, and I really like my deck.
So, the extort really the important thing in there, and happy not to have to splash this time?
Well, I was splashing for some really good rares, so, but it's fine. Like, I think splashing is overall worse, so it's pretty good.
And this time maybe not relying quite so much on rares. Do you feel like Orzhov's a deck that needs the rares, or is it the power of the extort chain can get there anyway?
It definitely doesn't need rares. The commons are insane, and the removal is so good, so yeah, no, I don't need rares. I do have a rare. I have a Crypt Gas, but that card's not that good.
So able to get there just with the commons and uncommons. Orzhov once again, Melissa Detora now 9-0. I'm going to throw things back to you in the studio so we can see a few more matches. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks.
Well, yeah. All right, so we're back in the booth. We're going to be checking up on a back feature match here with Grgur Petric Maretic versus
Ross-Latour. Jeremie Ross-Latour.
All right.
So, looking at, sounds like we have another Orzhov deck here. Jeremie Ross-Latour playing Orzhov.
Okay.
And he's playing against Grgur Petric Maretic. And Grgur is playing, well, it looks like we're seeing the same matchup.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, no, actually, this is Demir splashing green.
Oh, okay.
And it looks like a fairly complicated board.
Yeah, this is a typical Magic scene. 2 people staring at the board trying to figure out exactly how to process it. And I believe we're in combat here.
Yeah, Jeremie Ross-Latour, who you see on your right, is he's
the target
up
is not clear.
1 game to none, and he just played an
I might actually choose that one.
Urbis Protector? Or is that the
There's a Luminant Primordial.
Luminant
The
Primordial?
4/4.
There we go.
But if you have bounce
And there's a Denrova Horror on the side for Grgur.
Or copy.
He's also
or
got a
something.
Sage's Row Denizen. He's got a Mortis
I think
Strider.
this one is the worst. Is that this one?
And he
Your
takes
turn.
out one of... there's a Frilled Oculus, and I didn't quite see what he exiled there.
So this is the last match we have going on in the feature match area. Shahar Shenhar won his match. 2-0.
I didn't know about the ability.
And Jeremie's up a game over Grgur here.
So you gain 2, you're up to 11. Go.
And it looks like we're passing the turn back to Grgur, who is in top deck mode.
In the last game, but
yeah, I think
very carefully draws his card. He must be looking for something specific. There's a Vizkopa Confessor on the side of Jeremie Latour, also Basilica Guards, and a Cartel Aristocrat. All right, a Nimbus Swimmer, one of the splashed cards it looks like for Grgur. It's going to come down as a 4/4 flyer for him. That's pretty huge. There's a Smite and a Kingpin's Pet for Jeremie, so he can actually afford to kind of sit back here as he pays for a couple of extort triggers.
Plays the Kingpin Pet, sitting back on Smite.
I guess
sitting back on Smite's Knight. If he wants, he can do the trick that we were talking about. All of Grgur's creatures are blue. He can get that Aristocrat in there if he wants to sack something. Jeremie has 3 extort creatures on the battlefield now as well, so any cheap spell off the top of his deck is going to equal huge life swings if he wants it to. Looks like the
Grgur spins his Nimbus swimmer into the red zone.
He does indeed, and it's probably going to get smote.
Yeah,
smitten, smited.
Smote is a fine.
Smote sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm up to 9. What did you get there?
Go.
Nothing.
Oh, he took it. He just didn't.
He just decided to take it. That's
I guess he's looking for the extort triggers.
Oh, I see. He could just.
He only
take
had
it this
one
turn.
white. He only had 1 white available to him. He didn't have the ability to extort it all. So he's like,
yeah,
I could take 4. I'll kill it next turn.
That's right.
And I'll gain 3?
Yeah, 3. So he'll get 3. So he's only taking 1 effectively from that by waiting a turn. Now the risk involved is if Grgur can find a way to get rid of that Kingpin's Pet, but he's top decking.
Or draw, a counter spell.
Sure. Yeah, Psychic
Spell
Strike.
Rupture.
Yep.
Spell Rupture is especially good against Orzhov.
Yeah, because they always want to use it all
They want
up.
to use all their mana on their triggers.
Yeah, and those triggers do go on first, so you have to pay. Grgur has a Guild Mage here, which could be interesting. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got 6 mana sources right now.
Interesting card there for Grgur, the Mortis Strider.
Yeah. That's one that I've seen be very good and also very bad. I think it's one of those cards that it really wants a home.
So, but you could have that counter again. I have got to try it. A block, Smite, and extort for 3. That's 12 to 6.
So you hear Jeremie referencing the Spell Rupture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He says, but I have to try it, and he says, yes, when it doesn't get ruptured. And he did, in fact, extort for the full amount as well. And Duskmantle Guild Mage for Grgur Petric Maretic could be a potential win condition.
I passed one in the draft.
He gets milled twice.
Doors of Guild Gates instead. I'm not sure it was a good move. It's so good, but...
Right, these guys seem pretty friendly with each other. They're talking about the draft portion.
Denizen. Extort for 3.
That's a Denizen
3 to 15.
that is going to get extorted for 3 as well. And it's going to make it 3 to 15, and he's going to attack in with his Kingpin's Pet to bring Grgur all the way down to 1. And Grgur reminds him, you could have just sacked the dude and killed me, but you decided not to.
Grizzly Spectacle.
Yeah.
And he finds Grizzly Spectacle, but he knows that it's too late, and he extends the hand.
It's not just too late. He only had 1 black source.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I know you have something.
And that will be the match
I just need to attack because I'll die.
Yeah, that's true.
So I just
because
have to...
the extort, I had 3 points of extort on the table. That's too strong. You cannot do anything.
I just have to hope you're bluffing me.
Well, since you do that Guild Mage, you could start milling me for a lot more. Maybe.
And welcome back to the booth. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. This is Brian David Marshall. So we saw a similar matchup twice, although different results for each one. In one of them, the more, or actually no.
Orzhov won on both sides.
Extort won everything, didn't it?
Yeah. Extort won everything. But interestingly, in both cases, the other deck we were looking at was a 3-color version. In one case, it was a Simic deck splashing red, and in the other case, it was a Dimir deck splashing Simic.
I see.
You know, splashing Gruul in one, splashing Simic in the other.
Yeah, you know, we heard Melissa Detora say that she had a deck that was splashing yesterday, but she said she thinks, like, those were powerful rares, it was worth it, but in general, she's like, I don't want to be splashing. Also, great quote, I don't need rares.
Yeah. If you can be on guild, executing your guild's plan, right, with the premium commons and uncommons of your guild.
Yes.
That's where you want to be.
Absolutely. I will take that any day over some greedy wild deck, and I've played them both.
Yeah.
But, man, I just want to be consistent. And like you said, like that's, I think, why Dimir was interesting at the beginning is what is Dimir's plan?
Right.
Like with the other guilds, you could start to put a picture pretty quickly together, but Dimir was interesting in the sense that it's like, are we trying to mill people? Are we just trying to get a lot of value from Cypher spells? But again, if you do know what your guild's plan is and you can stick to it and make it as consistent as possible, there's an avenue to victory every time.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting take on this format. Like you just don't have to feel like, oh, my opponent had these crazy rares. It's always going to happen, right? There's always going to be that opportunity.
Rares.
But you know, again, you can get there with, you know, Cloudfin Raptors and Shamble Sharks.
Yes.
You can get there with Syndic of Tithes and Kingpin Pets. You know, you can get there with Slaughterhorns.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and Zertos Wines.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that card's good.
Yeah, I love that
That's a card I like quite a bit.
I was
That's
watching
a big
that last
stabilizer.
night in my Simic deck.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. They never see it coming. Yeah. So we'll be getting some updates on the overall look of the tournament when we get back to the news desk. But for us in here, you know, Melissa Detora, undefeated still.
9-0.
Just doesn't like losing, apparently.
Yeah, no, she does not. You could see it in her face.
I know.
She's like
doesn't need rares, doesn't like losing.
Yeah, that's a great Magic resume.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. You know, if you can be the type of drafter where rares are just a bonus for you, that's a pretty nice thing to have.
Right.
So.
Yeah, there was an interesting quote on the Magic Pro Tour Twitter feed earlier where someone was like doing Zvi Moshowitz Mad Libs, and he's like, I think I'm taking common card blank over rare card blank. You know, I'm probably insane.
Yes. And he kind of is. I've had a chance to get exposed to him a little bit lately, and he thinks of things differently.
You think he is insane? Is that what you're saying on air?
Possible.
All right, let's before you get yourself in more trouble, let's go back to the news desk.
Yeah, let's head back over there. We'll be back for the next round after that.
Welcome back to the news desk. Rich Hagan here, manning the booth with assorted results for you. Obviously, Melissa, 9-0 over Simono, still 7-1-1, and you know that draw could work in Simono's favour down the back end of today because he's kind of that 1 point ahead of all the 7-2s, and that could mean he might be able to ID later in the day, assuming he can get out of the draft pod alive, having just had a defeat to Melissa. Now, Ben Stark, I went to watch some of his match. He was up against Paul Rini from Chinese Taipei. Ben Stark won that one to advance to 8-1 over Rini. Rini looked in really good shape in the deciding air. It was a good match. Rini managed to get down Death Cult Rogue, put Hands of Binding on it. Looked like that tempo swing was going to be enough. But Ben Stark came back with 1,000 lashes, and that is quite a beating. And that enabled him to come back into the match. He eventually won that. Ben Stark at 8-1. And if you want to see how Ben Stark pulled his Orzhov deck together, we saw Melissa do the same live on the camera. Ben Stark has agreed to be our draft viewer expert after the next round. So you'll see all his key picks in his own words. So that's a great thing because Ben Stark, one of the best limited players on earth. Teammate Eric Froelich, he was up against Isaac Egan of Australia. Isaac Egan, 7-2 now, and that means Eric Froelich is 8-1, possibly heading towards his third Pro Tour top 8. One more result to bring you right now, and that is Joel Larson. He's halted the slide. The Swede, 6-0, then 6-2 from the last 2 rounds of standard. He's back in draft. He continues undefeated in draft, 7-2 at the expense of Alex Gerlach, who is now 6-3. So more results coming in. Of course, the round's still going on. What we're going to do now is go back in the time machine to yesterday, and Zach and I over at the video wall, we're going to walk you through the first picks of the draft viewer. How did our 8 do? What did they pick? Could they have chosen something different? Would the paths have been different? Let's take a look as we go inside the draft viewer. Hello everyone, Rich Hagan, Zach Hill here, going inside the draft viewer. Yesterday at 0-0, remember draft was first this time, 8 players sat down at a killer pod. And Zach, we're going to take a look at the first picks for all our 8 players. So let's get to the big board. Let's see who's up first. It's Andreas Nordahl of Norway. Zach, tell us what we're looking at here.
All right, so you look at a pack like this, there's several different things you have to think about. The first is if you're willing to commit to a guild or not. The second is how good the cards are. I look at a pack like this, I see a gate, okay, you don't want to first pick it, but you can fix your mana. I'm going through, 1,000 Lashes is the card that stands out the most right here. Premier Removal Spell, also a card that can clock, it can win a game by itself. I passed right over Molten Primordial. A lot of other formats, you know, it's a 6/4 with haste, you steal their best guy, you attack him, basically wins the game on the spot. It's 7 mana, a lot of mana in a format as fast as Gatecrash. Looking through the rest of the pack, again, you've also got Urbis Protector. Kind of the same variant of a card that just very expensive but very powerful. You just don't have a lot of time in this environment.
Okay, so are you more or less, when you sit down to draft, you're seeing 6, you're seeing 7, and you're saying no thank you, I just can't get there? Or is that something that you'd consider once you're much further along in the draft and you think, I've got room for 1 or 2 of these big guys?
I think it's a lot more the latter. I think it's not a format where you can't play a card like that, but it's a card where you have to work to play a card like that, and a card you need to build your deck around. So you can definitely first pick a card like that if you're willing to sort of do the work of getting there. But in this case, in this pack, there's a lot better cards than that.
Okay, now what Nordahl actually picks is this 1,000 Lashes. And what I want to ask you, Zach, it is a commitment in white and black. Obviously, he could end up Boros, white-red. He could go elsewhere with the black spells. Potentially, he could end up Dimir. How splashable is 1,000 Lashes either way? And is this a card that you would be willing to give up if the draft takes you in a different direction?
Well, first of all, I think you do have to be willing to give up your first pick. I think a lot of mistakes players make is just say, okay, my first pick's really good, I've got to play it at all costs. Can't really do that. That said, 1,000 Lashes is an eminently splashable card. It's good at every phase of the game. It's not like, oh, you have to cast it on turn 4 for it to be good. So I've played it in plenty of Dimir decks. I played it in plenty of Boros decks. You're not excited to splash in this format, again, because it's fast. But, I mean, you're also excited to have a very powerful card like 1,000 Lashes in your deck. So I do think you can splash it.
Okay, so that's Andreas Nordahl of Norway. Let's move around. To his left, passing, therefore, is Don van Ravensvaart of the Netherlands. Now, we said in our preview, good luck, my friend, in your first Pro Tour, PTQ Melbourne winner. Probably not going to do that well. That turned out not to be true at all. He did fantastically. Zach, talk us through the first set of cards he saw in his entire Pro Tour career.
For sure. So the first card that stands out to me is actually Agoraphobia. It's not really sort of a traditionally powerful card, you know, -5, -0. It's like an okay removal spell.
Sure.
But in this set, your blue decks just really need to get to the long game. In addition, if you're in Dimir, you can pick up some extort cards in mono black. Being able to just bounce Agoraphobia and cast it to extort, really, really powerful ability, especially as the game goes longer and longer. Angelic Edict, great removal spell, a little expensive but kills anything dead. Killing Glare, another really high quality removal spell. Metropolis Sprite, not really excited about picking it this early, but it's kind of a quality card. Pit Fight, a card that you want in a lot of your Simic decks and all of your Gruul decks. This is really a good pack. You've got Drakewing Crassus, hard-hitting aggressive card, but it's a bit of a commitment. And then finally over here, you've got Rubble Hulk, who, you know, for 3 mana can just deal an additional 8 damage out of nowhere.
Wait. What do you mean, finally? You haven't even talked about Killing Glare and Devour Flesh. You've got these 2 premium mono black removal spells, and you're kind of just going straight past that. That's how good this pack is. It's just an, I mean, really, you could almost pick, not quite blind from the pack. I guess you could end up with a Forced Adaptation, which is arguably the worst card in this pack, but it's a crazy good pack.
If I forgot about Killing Glare, I made a mistake. Killing Glare definitely excellent card in this pack. The reason I skipped over Devour Flesh was just because I think this spell a lot more proactive, and actually the life matters a lot in a format like this.
Sure, absolutely, because they gain life equal to the creature's toughness on Devour Flesh. So maybe you don't want to give them back that 4, 5, maybe even 6 life. That can be a big deal. All right, so he ends up with Rubble Hulk. Do you like the pick?
I think by picking Rubble Hulk, you're making a clear statement. You're saying, I like Gruul. You want to get the ramp deck. You're saying, okay, I'm going to go top heavy a little bit. I don't think it's the card I would have picked because it's a lot more of a color commitment, and I'm not sure I can get there. But I respect the pick, and it's definitely a card that people are not going to be playing around. It can really kind of end games by itself.
One other question on this pick. Rubble Hulk is rare.
Right.
Is there an element to which, when you see on the left, and we'll see who gets this pack next, when you look at a pack and you see the rare is missing, it can literally be anything.
Exactly.
Is there an element that sometimes you value picking a common or an uncommon, leaving a rare in the pack, specifically to say to the player on your left, hey, you know what? I have picked an uncommon that I value higher than this rare Rubble Hulk. Have you worked out what I might have picked?
For sure. There's definitely a lot of value to that. A tricky thing about this set is just that there could be a lot. There's a lot of uncommons, I think, that you could consider picking over Rubble Hulk.
Okay.
So and the way that Ravnica works, you have a lot of cycles. So it's like in some sets it's like, okay, mind control, overrun, fireball. And this set, it could be any guild mage.
Any guild mage,
so it's less direct of a signal than you get otherwise.
Now, as it turned out, Ron van Ravensvaai of the Netherlands, he won the whole draft. He went 3-0. He ran the table. Let's move on to seat number 3, and let's see who we've got next. So there goes Ravensvaai. Away we go, and we come to Ben S, who'll be back next round to tell us about his day 2 draft. Looks pretty good from here. So again, what do we got, Zach? What are we looking at?
Well, you take a look at this pack, and it's really not that exciting of a pack. You've got a kind of medium rare in Immortal Servitude. You're not really getting too excited about that. Miming Slime is like kind of okay, but not really good. Ivy Lane Denizen, again, a card you're going to always play, but not super exciting. The card that stands out to me is Bane Alley Broker.
Yep.
Draws you a lot of cards. It can actually block a 2/2 as an 0/3, but a lot of people really don't like Dimir. That's another reason that Shadow Slice, very powerful card, but you don't see it going highly because it's Dimir. And finally you have Smite, which is just kind of a solid but unexciting removal spell that, it's kind of a role player. It does exactly what it says it does.
One question, I wonder whether you might consider, if you like red a lot, taking the Warmind Infantry, partly because it then literally empties the pack of red.
For sure.
At which point, next player round has to think that you took a common, there are no red cards left in the pack. It's a pretty good bet that there is a red common sitting to your right at that point.
No, that's a really good point. And Warmind Infantry is an extremely solid card. I think it's a very defensible first pick. I guess the reason I don't like it as much is I feel like it's kind of low upside. Like if you want to cut off a color, I think you just go with the Broker right here because it's like the only sort of Dimir card that like is actually a card that you'd be really excited about playing again besides Shadow Slice. But then with without the Broker in the pack, I think you have cards that are sort of clearly better picks than it. But yeah, I mean, certainly that's something you can think about is whether you want to communicate your color choice.
All right, so Ben takes Smite, ends up 2-1. Let's move to seat 4. So we're following round and we get to our second Dutchman, Lennart Lindeman. He's played on one Pro Tour before, way back in the day, 2002. 3 lifetime pro points coming into this event. Again, we thought Sacrificial Lamb, not a bit of it. He went 2-0 and then lost out in a pretty tight match with Don van Ravensvaai, his countryman, to finish off the pod at 2-1 for him, 3-0 for Don. So here's what Lennart Lindeman looks at. He's got a Consuming Aberration in the rare slot, Corpse Blockade, Crackling Perimeter, an Ember Beast, wants Friends, Foundry Street Denizen, nice Boros card, Sky Knight Legionnaire, Simic Flux Mage, an interesting card, your little Metropolis Sprite, good removal again, Killing Glare, got a Gate, Slate Street Ruffian, another of those Warmind Infantries, and a Wildwood Rebirth. Again, not a particularly strong pack, Zach.
Well, I mean, yeah, you see Killing Glare here. I think, again, that's a card you really want, but you're absolutely right. It's not a terribly deep pack. You've got the infantry again, but I think this is a case where you look in the top left, you see a Consuming Aberration. You may not get excited about Bane Alley Broker if you're Ben Stark. This card, even better than that. It is a Dimir card, but it's very hard to lose the game if you untap with this.
And of course, a lot of you know this at home because Consuming Aberration was in the guild pack at the pre-release. So a lot of you will have played with and against Consuming Aberration and just seen how quickly it gets out of hand.
Exactly, and like we have all these arguments about signaling and staying open or whatever. Sometimes a card is just so good that you have to take it. I think that's what happened in this pack.
Yeah, and not only does he do that, It happens to be blue and black. And what that does for him is it cements him towards Dimir, the guild that, as we found out, is kind of underdrafted, undervalued, underappreciated, and therefore over in terms of the opportunity. So, in a sense, forced that way.
Right.
But good news for him, and he started out 2-1, partly off the back of that.
Right.
So we're halfway round the table, so on we go round the back side of the table, and we get to Reed Duke. Zach, what's he looking at?
So, I mean, Reed, you know, again, just sort of starting out with the top. Assault Griffin, always fine, not a card you want to be taking first. You've got Death Cult Rogue and Hands of Binding. I love Hands of Binding in my blue decks. Huge tempo play, acts like a removal spell. Really, really, really good card. Homing Lightning, though, just straight up kill spell, monocolored, kills basically anything. You see another 1,000 Lashes, good kill spell, really high quality pack. You'd be really excited to see any of this, but then obviously the rare Stolen Identity. Clone is great and limited. 2 clones are even better, and any number of clones, hard to really argue with.
Some people won't know what clone is. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy. Clone, that's the original card that did that. Copy of target artifact or creature. So you could even copy something like a Blind Obedience, couldn't you?
Yeah,
Something,
sure.
Is that right?
Well,
Is that
not
right?
a Blind
not Blind
Obedience,
Obedience. No.
a
But
key rune
Armored
or anything
Transport
like
or a
that.
Q, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's your Stolen Identity. That is what he picks. One question with your R&D hat on. We've seen a couple of Killing Glares go by.
Yeah, sure.
Single black and X.
Right.
Removal spell. Here's Homing Lightning. 2 and 2 red,
right?
As opposed to, let's say, 3 and a red.
Of course.
Explain the difference and why you do that sometimes with the double red.
A lot of the time, you just want to make sure that not all your removal spells are cards that can be splashed into any deck. For something like Homing Lightning, where it's like, it's an instant, it kills basically anything. You see this Grizzly Spectacle in the common slot. Something that's just...
Double black.
Double black, exactly. Something that's that versatile and that powerful. You really want to make people invest in a color to get access to that level of power. And not just say, okay, I'm playing green-blue, I'll play 2 mountains and a Homing Lightning.
And those 2 mountains are what we mean by a splash. 9 swamps, 7 islands. I'll just slot in my splash, my 2 mountains, and that lets you play Homing Lightning. No, it doesn't, because you've got the double red. All right, thanks for that, Zach. And I know most of you know that, but we're always looking to new people as well. Let's move on. That was Reed Duke, and now Petric Chapin, the innovator. He has an adaptive Snapjaw, little bomber core, the sort of poor man's battalion guy. Yeah. Further along though, super powerful battalion, frontline medic. As we come along the middle row, another Metropolis Sprite, a double red, we just talked about that in the cost, for massive raid. Last thoughts to draw a card. Primal Visitation, Righteous Charge can be a game winner late on, particularly for Boros, and Wojciech Halberdiers are real sort of meat and potatoes of the quick Boros deck. So what do you like here? Is it clear cut?
I don't know how clear-cut it is. I mean, like, Righteous Charge has huge upside, but you don't want to take it this early. Massive Raid is a card that looks a lot better than I think it plays out in reality.
Sure.
You know, it's a removal spell, but the double red is challenging, and you have to have a lot of creatures in play first. I think, really, the only picks that get me excited here are Wojciech Halberdiers and Frontline Medic.
Right.
And I think Frontline Medic is just better in, you know, it's a better card, it keeps you more open, and it's even better, I think, in the Boros deck than Wojciech Halberdiers is. So I think Frontline Medic is just, it's a really solid pick. It's not like a bomb or anything, but it's quite good.
I rate it a little higher than Zach because Boros so often wants to attack and give battalion, and often you're suiciding 1 or 2 guys. Maybe you get to attack with 4, you know that 2 are going to die. When Frontline Medic is in your battalion team, they're all indestructible, they all come back again for another set of battalion triggers, and that's often enough to win the game. I actually do think of that, I don't call it a bomb, because certainly when you draw it late, it's just kind of a 3-3
Still a 3-3
around. But if it's in your opening hand and you are Boros and you are aggressive, it can win plenty of games. Petric Chapin took Frontline Medic. Not sure whether it won him plenty of games, but it didn't win him plenty of matches. Chapin began 0-3. Someone at the table had to turn out to be beginning with a Frontline Medic. Let's move on. Let's see who we've got next. It's Gardenis Vidigiris. Now this, of course, this was just the start of a whole deck sequence that you can watch back from yesterday's coverage. Go came in and talked us all the way through. And he wasn't terribly happy, Zach, so I'm going to spoil part of what he said, which was, I took Fathom Mage, it didn't really do much for me. So I want you to ignore the Fathom Mage and try and take us in a different direction that can change the opening of Go's draft. Because in fact, he takes another Fathom Mage pick 2 as a result. So go a different direction for us.
Go a different direction.
I didn't do that on purpose.
I think he's
really
trying to
didn't.
sneak one in on me, Rich.
I wasn't. Go on.
Okay, so we're ignoring Fathom Mage. It's like fine. The 2 cards in this pack I really think are Mugging and Grizzly Spectacle.
Okay.
Removal is really good in this format. Removal is good in every format, but with Boros needing to have 3 creatures to really do its thing, and Gruul needing to have creatures to take advantage of Blood Rush, instant speed removal can just be extraordinarily, extraordinarily powerful. And the more removal you have, the more late game cards you can play, which other people don't want. So I think you go Mugging if you're looking to sort of keep your options open for a lower curve deck, sort of lower variance. It's less of a commitment because in theory you could splash it in like a Rug deck that we've seen people play. I really like Grizzly Spectacle, not only because it just deals with anything, it can deal with bombs, but it makes a lot of the other black cards better, specifically Death's Approach.
Sure.
If you cast a Spectacle, all of a sudden your Death's Approaches basically kill, you know...
Because Death's Approach is -X, where X is the number of creatures in their graveyard. Grizzly Spectacle helps fill it up.
Exactly, and you can get those cards late pretty often because people don't like Dimir. So I think I would take Grizzly Spectacle, hoping to go either Orzhov or Dimir and get a lot of late cards. And I'd take Mugging if I was just kind of being conservative.
Now, I hate to agree with Zach, but another plus point to the Grizzly Spectacle, I hope you've been watching, round about here in the pack, we keep seeing Killing Glares.
Yep.
Does anyone take them? They do not. So it turns out, if we go back a couple of packs from round the table, there's a very good chance that when you open something like Grizzly Spectacle and take it, you then get Death's Approaches, Killing Glares, you get the Devour Flesh that, you know, maybe isn't as good as some people would like. But
Still
it is
very good.
And it's quite possible, one of the interesting sort of draft pathways that we may get to see later today, and certainly in your Magic Online drafts, is starting mono black and just going black removal, black removal, black removal, black removal. Here's a white precinct 6 to make, which will make my removal better. More black removal. And eventually then you read the draft, and somewhere in pack 2, you start working out, am I Dimir? Am I actually going to pick up some red and be in this strange sort of quasi Rakdos control deck kind of thing? And all of those are really valid options if you start with a Grizzly Spectacle. So that's an interesting one.
A deck Sam Black drafted when I was testing with Star City was just a deck with 5 Executioner swings. It just had like a couple Grizzly Spectacles, 5 Executioner swings, and it killed literally every card the opponent cast, and it just won with whatever. And the more hard removal you have, the more reliable a deck like that can be, and you can get Executioner swing very late.
Okay, so that was Godenis Vidigiris. He took Fathom Mage. We looked at a different path, but then that changes everything. And then we get Olivier Ruel, the French Hall of Famer. What are we looking at here, Zach?
All right, so we've got like a Balustrade Spy. You don't want to take it too early, but I'm pointing it out just to, again, it turns on Death's Approach and things like that. Death Cult Rogue, again, solid. You don't really want to pick it first. I like a Duskmantle Guildmage a lot, but it's a commitment to Dimir. You're seeing, like there's a lot of quality cards, but not a lot of first picks in this pack until you get to Hellkite Tyrant.
Right.
Now, it's very expensive. You're not going to be gaining control of artifacts. You're not going to be winning the games. You have 20 artifacts.
Yeah, this thing has one line on it. It's flying and trample.
Right.
But that's a really good line.
Exactly, and these are really good numbers right in the bottom right-hand corner too. Nimbus Swimmer, I think, is kind of just a worse version of Hellkite Tyrant unless you really want to be in Simic. And then you're rounding stuff out with a Slaughterhorn, which is one of the premier Gruul cards, good in any green deck. I would probably go with either the Guildmage to force Dimir or Hellkite Tyrant because it's just so good. You know, you may not get to 6, but when you do, it's going to win you the game.
And that's a phrase we haven't actually said very much during this round the table. We haven't seen many cards we've said, this wins games.
Right.
And you absolutely say that about a 6/5 Flying Trampler for 6.
Exactly.
Absolutely great. All right. So, we got any more, or was that last one round? I've kind of lost track of. Are we all the way back to
I believe
Nordal?
that's it.
I think that's our bunch. So, 8 first picks, 8 choices, 8 starts of storylines. When you start each draft, start your own storyline, because where you go, it affects everyone. Downstream, upstream, most of all, it impacts your draft. So, each pick, work out where you want to go. Zach Hill, Rich Hagan, and we're going to be back at the news desk in just a moment. All right, welcome back to the news desk. Rich and Zach here with you. Hope you enjoyed that walk through the draft viewer. And remember, you can go online to magicthegathering.com and actually see all those picks for all the players. You can see Godenis Vidagiris' second Fathom Age. You can see where Patrick Chapin goes from his frontline medic. You can see what Consuming Aberration does for Leonard Lindemann. And on we go. The pairings are on the way, so we're only a few minutes out. But we wanted to take the time, obviously, when you open a pack, you only get to see 15 Gatecrash cards. We want to take a look at some more individual Gatecrash cards that we're going to see over these next couple of hours, largely in limited, but also some standard applications. So we're going to roll the dice in a minute and see what we come up with. I'm just wading through some results. The last few are coming in. We've got Robert Jerkovic going to 7-1-1, knocking Frenchman Loic Le Briand to 6-2-1. Robbie Bolick, he's gone to 7-2. Matteo Orsini Jones is down to 6-3. So we want to look at some Gatecrash cards. We've got some standard cards with things like Abrupt Decay, but we want to look at the Gatecrash cards right now with just one result left in the round. They are in fact now pairing, as I say. I can tell you that we're going to be heading towards Jerry Thompson and Robert Jerkovic, I do believe, is going to be our video feature in this coming round. But let's take a look. We mentioned Blind Obedience. I think I might have called it an artifact. It really isn't. It is, of course, a rare enchantment from Gatecrash. Talk us about Blind Obedience, Zach.
Well, one of the important things to remember about Blind Obedience is how good it is against certain specific strategies. One of the best decks coming out of Standard with Return to Ravnica was an aggressive black-red deck that played things like Hellrider, Falkenrath Aristocrat, Thundermaw Hellkite. The best part about those cards is the fact that they have haste. Blind Obedience buys you 4 or 5 life against those specific cards, often a lot more with Hellrider. And it does that on a 2-mana enchantment that also gains you more life when you start to extort. So it's a very specific answer to very specific types of cards. But your opponent, you're not going to be playing Shivan Dragon in a set. You're not going to be playing, Phantasmal Forces. You're playing cards like Falkenrath Aristocrat and Thundermaw Hellkite for the haste. And when you take those away, a lot worse.
All right, what's next? That was Blind Obedience. And next on our list is, here it comes. It's more Blind Obedience. They really want us to
it's
follow
very
the
blind.
law.
You cannot see.
Okay, there we go. Boros Charm. Now, it says 3 powerful options for an aggressive deck. That's true. An aggressive deck could be both limited and, Zach, constructed.
Yeah, and one deck that we've seen it in is actually in the mid-range blue-white-red deck. 4 damage is a lot. With Snapcaster Mage, you play it, Snapcaster it back, attack for 2, that's 10 damage. That's half of their life total. Other thing it's really, really good at, though, is killing Planeswalkers. We've seen a lot of Jace Memory Adept being a strategy for blue mirrors, because you can actually just mill them out. It makes Sphinx's Revelation a lot worse. But Boros Charm kills a Jace that hasn't ticked up for simply 2 mana. And the ability to kill powerful Planeswalkers, also like Garruk Primal Hunter, really, really useful. And then, of course, there's the obvious option of playing a Boros deck and just burning your opponent's face.
Would you like Boros Charm as a first pick in a draft?
I really would not.
Okay.
It's a powerful card, but direct damage to the opponent is not really where you want to be going in limited.
Okay, you wouldn't like that as a first pick. How about our next card, which is Boros Reckoner? How about that for a first pick in draft?
I would definitely first pick that.
Shocker.
I, in fact, did first pick that in a draft last night. Really, Boros Reckoner, kind of the premier card of the tournament, stops aggressive decks dead in their tracks. There's a lot of cute, adorable combos you can do with it. One of them's written up on the screen. Another one's simply Blasphemous Act, Harvest Pyre, even just, burning it for, regularly once it's in combat. There's a lot you can do with that card. There's a reason that it was flying off the shelves, and I think
it's super popular.
Exactly. And when we look back on Pro Tour Gatecrash, Boros Reckoner to me is the card that's going to stand out as the card that defined the format.
Okay. Now I'm going to be honest, I'm a bit disappointed with this next card. I need to give it a stiff talking to. This is Burning Tree Emissary, because this is a card where you get to live the dream. This is where maybe you get to draft a bunch of them, or you decide to put 4 into your constructed deck. And somebody somewhere has to have gone, turn 2, Burning Tree Emissary, Burning Tree Emissary, Burning Tree Emissary, Burning Tree Emissary, other 2-drop. Thanks for playing, my friends. And I've not seen that or heard about that in this room yet today. Burning Tree Emissary, you've only got a couple more rounds of limited to sort yourself out, my friend. What's going on?
Well, I mean, it's clearly designed to do exactly what it's intended to do, just flood the board with creatures. Team Panic is on a deck inspired by Saito's aggressive Gruul deck. I think the sort of combo that everyone remembers with the card is Burning Tree Emissary into Flinthoof Boar out of Magic 2013.
Yes.
It's a lot of power on the table in the second turn.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the thing, even though we talk about this crazy way you can go, just 2-drop, 2-drop in the space for a 2-drop. Massive deal.
Really good. And in the red deck, it allows that deck to only play 4 Stomping Ground, 4 Rootbound Crag as its green sources, even though it has somewhere between 8 and 12 green cards, because Burning Tree Emissary actually allows you to filter red mana into green mana on top of everything else.
All right, let's see what's next. We're just about getting ready to get rocking and rolling. We are done. Let's take a look at the video match. It's Jerry Thompson against Robert Yurkovich, Shuhei Nakamura against Kenny Oberg, Shahar Shenher against Paul Rietzel, and Eric Froelich against Ben Stark. Let's take you over for the next round of draft here at Pro Tour Gatecrash.